Welcome back to Overheard Online, and buckle in because tonight we are fully leaning into the season with an unapologetically Christmas-coded episode. So pour something merry, brace yourselves for a little time-slip tinsel, and let's get into the weird, the cozy, and cosmically off-kilter world of Christmas glitches. Episode 15, the Holiday Glitch Special, begins now. Our first story is from r/glitch in the Matrix. It's 6 years old, entitled, My Doppelgänger Lectured My Family. This was several years ago, a few days before Christmas. I walked into the kitchen where my sister, my brother, and my two cousins were all seated around the table. I poured water into a mug, put in a tea bag, and put the mug in the microwave to make tea. At that point, my cousin asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Making tea." She replied, "No, I mean, why are you using the microwave?" I didn't understand what she meant. That was how I made tea at the time. Then my older cousin and my siblings jumped in, all at once, saying that I had, earlier that same day, lectured them about how unhealthy microwaves are. They said I even cited some study where boiled water was cooled, microwaved water was cooled, both poured on houseplants, and the microwaved water plants died. I had never heard of that study. I had no memory of the entire exchange, and I was using the microwave often back then. In fact, my cousin looked it up and said that the study was real. Debunked, yes, but it was a real study. We were all totally confused. At first, I thought they were messing with me, and they thought I was messing with them. But I know I wasn't, and I really don't think that they were either. It would have been an elaborate and weirdly specific prank, and none of them had ever done anything remotely like that before or since. All these years later, my no-nonsense older brother still insists he remembers my lecture. Plus, my siblings and all my cousins don't even like each other enough to conspire on something like this. And then came the icing on the cake. A few hours later, we were talking about it again, because seriously, what else would we be doing? My dad was in the room now, half listening and reading the paper. He overheard my cousin explaining the microwave study was real, and he casually chimed in, "Oh yeah, that's what Grace was telling us about earlier." So 5 people, at least 3 of whom I trust immensely, all remembered me doing and saying something that, as far as I know, I literally do not do and did not say. Now, I'll admit, back then, this is definitely the type of thing that I might have done. It wasn't out of character, but I cannot imagine blacking out, forming a brand new opinion on microwaves, finding research to support it, lecturing my entire family, returning to my room, and forgetting it ever happened. I was 25 and had been completely sober for about 6 months. None of it makes any sense. So, who was that who lectured my family? I like to imagine that when she got back to her universe, none of her family remembered anything that she said, and she just assumed they were all bad listeners. This next story is also from r/glitch in the Matrix. It's 2 years old, entitled, Picture in My Daughter's Book Has Changed. My daughter got a book for Christmas. It's this really sweet little book that plays the tune of Row, row, row your boat, and each page has some artwork on it. The first page has 4 ducks floating down the stream, 3 yellow ducklings, and 1 brown duck. All of the ducks were facing the same way. Now, this is important. My daughter is 1, so right now she loves counting and repetition. Every time we see the ducks, she points to them, and I count them out loud. I've done this at least 100 times already. I'm not even exaggerating. She loves this book and won't leave it alone. My husband has also read it to her loads, and he saw her pointing at the ducks, so he started counting them out loud too. I was reading it to her this morning. It's a very short book, only about 8 pages long, and my husband was watching. Everything was normal until my daughter flipped back to the first page with the ducks, and my husband and I said at the exact same time, "What the F?" The duck at the back of the line is now facing the other way. I swear, I have looked at these ducks so many times over the last few days. I've counted them more times than I can even guess. They were all facing the same direction. I would literally bet my life on it. I tried to tell myself I might be an overtired parent getting it wrong, though honestly, I know this book like the back of my hand, so even that feels like a stretch. But what really gets me is that my husband noticed it at the exact same moment, and he was also weirded out. We both looked at each other, then back at the duck, and were in full agreement that the image has changed. I've read stories on the sub before and have always thought, oh cool, I wish something like that would happen to me. And now that it has, I feel nervous and also a little bit crazy. I'm so glad my husband is in the same position though. It confirms that I'm not completely losing my mind. Our OP did include a photo of the page with the ducks on them. I'll tag it in the description for anyone who's curious. For anyone just listening to the audio here and who doesn't have access to their computers to see the image themselves, it's a page from a child's book, and there is one duck, a big duck, in the background that's facing the left. Then there's a mother duck with 3 little yellow ducks behind. And the mother and 2 of the little ducks are all facing the right side. And the last duck is facing the left side. So from what I gather, OP is basically saying that the last duck was always facing the same direction as its mother and the other 2 ducks. We have a commenter who responds to this with their own glitch story. They write, I just had a glitch in the matrix experience while reading your post. I was drinking my coffee at the kitchen table while my 5-year-old grandson was in the living room. I was thinking about your post and about how life is truly a dream and how we could be living in a simulation. I was imagining the duck in your daughter's book and how it would freak me out if I ever saw it change. I was in a sort of daydreaming state when my grandson yelled out, "Does this word spell duck? D-U-C-K?" He's learning to read and was reading a book at the time. I got goosebumps from his random question. Our next story is 9 years old. It's called The Christmas Store. When I was in high school, I lived in a small town, and the closest place to shop, Midland, was about an hour and a half away. My dad and I drove there one Saturday because he needed to get some things from Home Depot. While we were driving around Midland, I saw a billboard advertising a Christmas store, and I asked if we could go. My dad said no because we needed to get home, so we just headed back. On Monday at school, a girl that I was acquaintances with, not really friends with, came up to me at lunch and asked what I ended up buying at the Christmas store. Bewildered, I asked her how she knew I wanted to go there. And she said, "What do you mean? I saw you there. We spoke for about 20 minutes. I explained to her that I had wanted to go, but I didn't get to go, and she was really freaked out. She just kept saying, "You were there. I saw you. I spoke to you." It's been 11 years since we had that conversation, and I still think about it all the time because the whole thing just blows my mind. The next story is 9 years old and called The Mysterious Christmas Visitor. On Christmas morning a few years ago, my family and I were hanging out in our house waiting for everyone to wake up. We had no children there that morning, so we were getting a late start. My sister-in-law called from a house not far away, where another group of relatives were celebrating Christmas, to see how our morning was going and to make plans to get together again during the holidays. She also mentioned that her daughter, our niece Jay, had left her dog food dish at her house the night before when everyone had been visiting. My husband was the one on the phone with her, and she told him that a friend of Jay's named Stacy was going to come by her house to pick up the dish and bring it to their house before heading back home to the town where both he and Jay lived. My husband remembers this clearly because Stacy was a guy, and that was an unusual name for a guy. Just then, our doorbell rang. My husband said, "I think he's here now." They hung up the phone and he answered the door. There was a guy who introduced himself as, and he responded to, the name Stacy. We invited him in, and I chatted with him while my husband went to go get the dog bowl. I did most of the talking, asking questions about the weather, the holidays, traffic, just small talk. And I thanked him for stopping by to bring Jay the dog dish. My husband brought it out and handed it to Stacy. He took it. We said our goodbyes, Merry Christmas, and then he left. My husband then called my sister-in-law back to continue their conversation and told her Stacy had just picked up the dog bowl, as expected. She said, "What are you talking about?" After some more questions exchanged with Jay, Jay confirmed Jay didn't know anyone named Stacy. No one was supposed to come pick up the dog bowl. They had just planned to get it next time they were at our house. So we felt like we were in the Twilight Zone. The logical explanation would be that my husband misunderstood. But then why did a random guy show up at our doorstep on Christmas morning at that exact moment, answer to the name Stacy, take the dog dish, and leave? Everyone was freaked out. We never figured it out. No one thought to check if he had a car. But when we looked outside again after the second phone call, he was gone. I thought about this story when I found the subreddit, and it still feels like a glitch in the Matrix. At the time, I said it was like we were on different timelines or something. This time of year reminded me of the story again. So strange. The next story is 3 years old, and it's titled A Christmas Miracle. A few years back, my family went to Colorado to ski, and we bought 3 gondola ornaments. It's a family tradition that anytime we take a trip, we get 3 ornaments. One for my parents' tree, one for me, and one for my sister. There is no debate about the number that we got. Even though my sister and I moved out, we both love how the gondolas look stacked together, so we decided to leave ours at our parents' house. We go there for Christmas anyways, and we like seeing them displayed as a set. Last year, though, one of them fell off the tree and broke while we were all decorating together. This year, we started decorating again and talked about how sad it was going to be that we'd have one less gondola and how the set wouldn't look as cool. Well, we opened up the box with the gondolas and all 3 were there, perfectly intact. All 4 of us are totally baffled. Our next story is 7 years old and titled IKEA Glitch in the Matrix. This is going to sound silly, but a couple of years ago, I was at IKEA with my mom and little sister, helping my mom shop for her apartment. We came to a display of cheap fleece blankets with cute patterns on them. One blanket had a reindeer pattern, and the other had Christmas trees. My mom and sister really wanted the reindeer one, but the only one in sight was the one on the display. We spent a good 10 minutes searching through all the surrounding bins looking for another reindeer blanket, but could only find the Christmas tree one. Eventually, my mom said, "Oh well, the tree one is cute enough," picked up a Christmas tree blanket, and we kept walking. About 5 minutes later, my sister pointed to my mom and said, "Wait, Mom, look." My mom had a reindeer blanket tucked under her arm. The original Christmas tree blanket was gone. We all looked at each other in shock. We all clearly had seen her pick up the blanket with the trees on it. We were right beside her the entire time, and she never set it down. Somewhere in that 5-minute window, the tree blanket had transformed into the reindeer blanket we had all spent minutes looking for. She still has a blanket to this day, and we make jokes about it being her magic blanket, but we've never been able to explain what happened that day. This next story is 28 days old, entitled, My Personal Experience of a Glitch in the Matrix. It goes, One day, I left the house and sat down on the porch. Around my home, there are many different trees, from the smallest to the largest, all different in shape and size. I sat there looking at the trees and noticed that the world had seemed to have frozen, even though they always sway, even in the windless weather. But now it was as if everything had stopped. The air even felt different, somehow thicker than usual. Then I looked up above the trees. There were clouds floating low above the ground, small and a bit sparse, but moving quickly. So there was wind. But then why weren't the trees moving? Why were all the leaves frozen, like a still photograph? I looked higher. The larger clouds were moving above the smaller ones, so there was definitely wind, and still the leaves weren't moving. Absolutely all of them were frozen. I went back inside, turning my back to the trees, and a thought came to me. Okay, is it maybe some kind of matrix simulation? But what if I imagined that the leaves on my right were moving? I turned my head to look exactly where I'd imagined it, and a few of the leaves moved, and then they froze again. I turned my head back towards the door, then quickly looked back. The trees were still. The leaves weren't moving at all. I went inside. An hour later, I went out again, and everything was normal. All the leaves were moving as usual. The trees were shifting in the breeze, and now the clouds were floating much slower than before. And one more thing, there was a highway near my house, and I could always hear the noise of traffic. But during that frozen moment, there was silence. Then just the sound of a couple of cars passing, then silence again. And also, you can always hear birds chirping in the morning. But at that moment, at around 8 a.m., there was not a single chirp. Our next story is 5 years old, titled, A Gift from Beyond the Grave. Backstory first. On December 11, 2004, my grandfather passed away. I was 13. Almost immediately, the 3 sons and 3 daughters split the family apart, and the feud never ended. In February 2011, while I was deployed overseas at 20 years old, my grandmother passed away. After that, the 3 sisters sold the house and hoarded every recipe, heirloom, and piece of family history. The only thing I ever asked for was my grandfather's dog tags. As the only grandchild who served in the military, they meant something deeply personal to me. But I was told that I would not have appreciated them, and my request was dismissed. I never asked for anything ever again. Years later, after being honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, I became a chef. And eventually I found myself thinking more and more about the recipes I grew up with, the ones locked away with the family members I no longer speak to. I cut ties completely. I wasn't going to pick sides. If the family couldn't exist as a unit, I didn't want to be a part of it. I haven't spoken to any of them since August of 2013, when barely any of them attended my wedding. Back to the story. The first week of December, I was talking with my brother. I only keep in contact with him and my father. My brother mentioned how awesome it would be to have the recipe for my grandfather's zucchini relish. They made it fresh with ingredients from their garden, jarred it, and it was such a big hit with the family. A few days later, I was writing a letter to accompany some recipes that I was sending to a friend for Christmas. I wrote the letter while I was taking a ferry ride to an island that I would be working on the next day. When I finished the letter, I tucked it into a pouch that I had never used on my backpack. The pouch is basically where your back meets the pack. It's open at the top and it's quite narrow. The letter remained there until the end of the week. On Friday, December 11, 2020, I returned home after work and immediately reached into a small, narrow pouch while focused on getting my house keys ready. I pull out a piece of weathered paper, Confused as this isn't the letter, I am now focused on this paper while thinking to myself, what the hell? The paper is weathered, written in blue ink, which reminded me of cheap blue pens my grandfather kept around the house, and the handwriting was vaguely familiar. I proceeded to read, and a chill goes right up my spine. In my hand was the zucchini relish recipe that my brother and I had been talking about just days prior. I immediately messaged my brother, and he tells me to look at the date. It is December 12th. In other words, it is the anniversary of my grandfather's death, and one of my grandfather's recipes spontaneously appeared in an unlikely place. I audibly thanked my grandfather as I walked into my house with the recipe in hand. Even more eerie is the fact that my brother has told me that the three daughters do not have this recipe in their possession, and yet here it was in mine. It's one thing to discuss something and then social media shows you ads for the exact same thing. It's another to discuss something deeply personal and have it spontaneously appear in an unlikely place by extraordinary means. Too long didn't read, my brother and I discussed a lost family recipe, and less than a week later, on the anniversary of our grandfather's passing, I found the recipe in my possession, despite not having contact with my family and having no means to acquire it. I thanked him for the gift. Our OP did include a photo of the recipe, so if anybody wants to take a peek, I will include the link in the description for this episode. And if anyone wants to try to make this relish and let me know how it tastes, I would love to know. This next story is 8 months old and titled, I Found an Old Toy in a New Couch. This literally just happened, and honestly, the timing makes it even weirder. I'm sitting here at midnight eating Wendy's with my dad, watching The Matrix. He goes to bed and I'm still on the couch. I accidentally drop my pen down the crack and I reach to get it, and instead of my pen, I spot this little toy thing I made in church when I was a kid. It was around Christmas when I made them, pipe cleaners twisted with red and white beads, shaped like candy canes or shepherd hooks, or a J for Jesus. I was probably 9 years old. That was 13 years ago. As soon as I saw it, I got this jolt of deja vu, like being back on the couch we had when I was a kid, fishing that same little thing out of the cushions. Here's the problem though. That couch, the one that I remember fishing that little thing out of, is long gone. We got rid of it when I was 11 or 12 and replaced it with a leather couch. And then a couple of years ago, we got another leather couch. There's been at least 2 sofa replacements since the last time I ever saw this toy. Even before that, I hadn't seen it for years. I completely forgot it even existed. So how in the hell was it sitting in the crack of the couch I have right now? A toy I last remembered losing in another couch over a decade ago. And to make it creepier, I was watching The Matrix while it was all happening. I don't know how it got here. I don't even know how it survived being lost through 3 pieces of furniture, but it was just there, exactly the way I remembered losing it. Our OP did edit to add photos. The photos look a little creepy, but you can see that they are holding up the couch cushion of a leather couch, which it looks like the cushions are stuck on the couch or fused to the couch, and you can see that there's a little toy underneath. And they do show photos of what it looks like. So if anyone is interested in looking at those, they will be in the show description. I did pull a couple of comments from this story. Our first commenter writes, my best friend lost her belly button ring in the family's pool in 2004. In 2023, I found it at the bottom of a box in my attic. Another commenter writes, okay, so here's the weird thing. There's been a random candy cane-sized toy in the grass near my driveway for about 2 weeks. I kept meaning to pick it up, but was always in a hurry. Yesterday, my daughter walked past it and said, hey, here's that toy. I haven't seen it in forever. Another commenter writes, in the 90s, I gave a cherished item to a friend. In 2009, we had a falling out. Then last year, or maybe the year before, it just appeared in my jewelry box. There isn't much space in there, and I empty it every couple of years, so I know it wasn't there before. I was thrilled, but completely confused. Another commenter writes, my mom lost a ring when I was a little girl. Years later, when I was a teenager, we found it sitting on the basement stairs. It was just sitting there. Our next story is 3 years old, and it's titled, A Strange Man Thought I Was Familiar to Him, Then He Vanished into Thin Air. The glitch happens at the end of this story, but the build-up was strange enough that I have to include it. This happened just before Christmas 2019. I was traveling by train back to my hometown. When I arrived at the platform, I walked over to the ticket machines. As I approached, there was an attendant standing beside me. As soon as he turned and saw me, he loudly said, well, finally you're here. I've been waiting 30 years for you to show up. I thought that was a kind of weird thing to say, especially since I was only 21. He looked like he was in his 50s, and the way he said it wasn't sarcastic or like he was joking at all. He sounded genuinely happy to see me. I was shy and awkward, so I didn't ask what he meant, even though I wish I had. He asked if he could help with anything, so I told him I needed help buying a ticket because it was my first time using the machines. As I was buying it, he made really intense eye contact, studying my face, like he was trying to confirm that I was someone he knew. I had only moved to the area 3 months earlier, and I had no family there, so he couldn't have mistaken me for a relative. I had definitely never seen him before. At one point he asked, are you going on another business trip? Which confused me even more because I was clearly a 21-year-old student, not a business traveler. For clarity, he wasn't creepy or hitting on me. He was polite, well-spoken, and he wasn't intoxicated. Now for the glitch. After I bought my ticket, he picked up my suitcase and walked me to the train. I stepped inside. He set the suitcase down next to me. I turned to thank him, and just like that, he was gone. It was as if the moment he let go of my suitcase, he vanished. There was almost no one else around, so he couldn't have disappeared into a crowd. I looked around the entire platform. He didn't get on the train. He wasn't anywhere. If he had run, I would have heard footsteps, and it wasn't enough time for him to get out of sight, even if he had sprinted. The whole situation felt strange, not exactly paranormal, but unreal. And just for context, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't on drugs, and I wasn't sleep deprived. There wasn't an easy explanation like hallucinating or misseeing something. He acted like he knew me. He spoke like I was someone returning after 30 years. And then without a single sound, he was gone. Anyone have any theories? Our first commenter writes, something similar happened to me at a train station when I was 18. A guy sat next to me on the train as I was heading back to uni, and for the entire journey, he kept talking about things that didn't quite make sense. I felt like I knew him, and he was talking as if we were long-lost friends. He didn't seem to have any mental health issues, he was intelligent, and he spoke about things that connected to me on a deep level. He kept drinking small bottles of whiskey, the kind you get on a train, and he seemed to be enjoying everything that was happening, like it was all new to him. His confidence was off the charts, not in a player way, but as if he was from a slightly more free and socially advanced culture. There was a definite vibe of he's not from here. For a reference, he looked like he was in his late 20s, wore black, had black facial hair, and black hair. Not long, but not short, and he had a very healthy vibe about him. For an entire hour, the tone was him both teaching me about life and building my confidence up. The whole time I felt a strange sensation, as though there was a different vibration about him, like he didn't quite fit in with his surroundings or with the other passengers, almost on a molecular level, like there was a bubble around him. When we arrived, I felt a little dizzy as I was getting off the train. He put his hand on my shoulder, looked into my eyes with reverence, like I was some kind of holy figure, and said, You're a great person. I felt genuine emotion from him that was far too strong for the circumstances. Then he walked the wrong way down the platform and disappeared into the crowd. I looked for him, but he was gone. For years, I wondered if he was a time traveler who came back to give me a message. Who knows, maybe he was. In the same comment thread, somebody responds to this comment saying, I think sometimes spirit, whoever, whatever it is, be it angels, totems, whatever, comes down and becomes physical for some reason, and sometimes we get to witness it, whether they have a grip on the physical plane or they're just touching down. This commenter then proceeds to tell their own story. One morning, I was at a store early to avoid crowds, and there was this little girl walking down the parking lot. This was the first time I realized that spirit comes down because of how she was acting. Most people would think she was special. She was walking and loud, singing and yelling, "Hi, beautiful day," just so loud. She was yelling so loudly I couldn't understand what she was saying half the time. And then she couldn't manage gross motor skills either. She was walking big, swinging her arms all over, taking huge, clumsy steps, but so joyful. Instead of annoying me or making me avoid her like most people would, I smiled and watched her, and I felt the same joy she was feeling. Maybe that's what your drinking friend was and why you felt a strong, genuine emotion, why he vibed differently, why he didn't fit in, why he seemed so free. I don't think it's possession. I don't know where the physical body comes from, but I do know that sometimes angels, for lack of a better word, come down to experience the physical world. Maybe it's like an office field trip for their work. I don't know. On the same thread, somebody else chimes in saying, when I was 17, I was pregnant and homeless with my extremely abusive boyfriend. One day we were walking and saw this woman. She was smiling at me and skating. Later, on the other side of town near a park, I saw the same blonde-haired woman on roller skates. Her smile immediately caught my attention. She stopped skating and said, "Hi, Angel. I'm so happy to see you." She didn't introduce herself, even though I looked confused. She just lingered near me, smiling only at me, never acknowledging my boyfriend. I felt such peace and comfort around her, like she was telling me everything was going to be okay. I never saw her again. A few years later, I dreamt of her. She was walking on a sunny dirt road, pregnant, and she hugged me. She told me that if I turned left, I'd be happy with life. I don't know what it meant, but it was so beautiful. In a new comment thread, another commenter responding to our original OP's question says, since you're only 21 and he said he'd been waiting 30 years for you to show up, I'm guessing you may have been someone else in a past life, and he recognized your soul even though you're in a new 21-year-old body. Supposedly, souls recognize each other even if they have different bodies across time. You may have even been a man in your past life who he recognized. Maybe if you could draw him from memory, you might ask around to see if anyone recognizes him. Start at the train station, ask attendants or management. They may be able to tell you who he was. In a new thread, another commenter writes, I actually had a much older couple come into a restaurant I was working at. They asked me when I started working there and why I never told them. I asked what they meant and if they were regulars, and they said, stop yanking our chain. We see you every weekend for dinner. After I told them I wasn't who they thought I was, they said, oh, wow, you look identical to our daughter. I went to get my table their refills, and as soon as I disappeared behind the wall, separating the dining room and the server station, they vanished too. The weird thing is, they had food in front of them just starting to eat, but when I came back out, there was a whole other set of people at the table waiting on their food with their drinks and starter bread at the exact same table. It was really weird. Our next story is 6 years old, entitled A Small Glitch at the Christmas Party. This isn't the craziest glitch, but it's definitely one that I can't wrap my head around. I bought my brother a tiny green arrow action figure for Christmas. The package is really small, and the figure is sealed tightly inside, so tight that I can't wiggle or shift it at all. I can't stress that part enough. When it arrived, the figure was backwards, with the quiver facing outward and his face hidden. I tried moving it, but it wouldn't budge. so I just wrapped it as is. 2 weeks went by, my brother opened it on Christmas, looked at the package, and the figure was now facing forward perfectly, his face fully visible. I asked how he got it to turn, and he said he didn't do anything. It just changed position randomly. We all stared at it for a minute, genuinely confused, and then I just wrote it off as a glitch. This next story is 6 years old, entitled A Family Tradition That I've Never Heard of. My sister texted me at midnight and said, "Christmas Eve gift." I had no idea what she meant. I moved away almost 5 years ago, and when I asked her to explain, she just roasted me for forgetting a tradition that she claims we've practiced our entire lives. She told me to ask our grandmother what it meant. My mother confirmed it too. Apparently, whoever says Christmas Eve gift first on December 24th wins, and our family has done it since before I was even born. But I have a better memory than most people. Even my husband said he's never heard of this tradition before. How could I have lived in that house for 21 years, supposedly participated in this every single Christmas Eve, and have absolutely no memory that it even existed? One commenter on this story asks, "Have you ever had an accident where your head was hit? Any family history of strokes? Started any new medication? Those kind of things can mess with your memory. How long has your husband known you? And how involved was he in past Christmases? I'd get a physical before assuming the matrix glitched. Memory issues should be reported to a doctor." The OP of the story writes, "No family history of strokes, didn't hit my head, and I've been to a doctor recently. I'm absolutely fine. My memory has always been very sharp. There is no way something like this would have been forgotten by me." Another commenter chimes in a separate thread saying, "I'm glad I'm not the only one this has happened to. I recently discovered that we supposedly have a winter solstice family tradition, making a scarecrow out of a broom handle and beating it with sticks until we've broken winter's back. I'm the eldest child, and I have never seen this happen. I've never participated, and I have never heard of it. Both my mom and sister insist that we've done it every single year of our lives and want to know what's wrong with me for claiming that we haven't. None of my friends remember it either, although they do remember the solstice bonfires and parties." Another commenter writes, "Something similar happened last night at my family's Christmas party. My 12-year-old twin cousins had snuck drinks, and one of them got totally drunk. I said, 'Dude, you're still a baby.' And another cousin who's also 21 said, 'Remember when we used to do the same thing?' I have zero memory of ever drinking before 14, but she and a couple of other cousins are adamant that we did it from age 11 until we were actually allowed to drink at gatherings." This next story is titled Ring Ring Hello, and it is 5 years old, again from Glitch in the Matrix. It was December 23rd, 2008, 7:36 p.m. EST. I was sitting on the floor of the den wrapping Christmas gifts for my kids. Their father was behind me in the recliner, also wrapping. My phone rang, the screen showed unknown number, so I ignored it. It rang again immediately, same number, so this time I answered. "Hello?" A man's voice, calm, responded. He asked for me by name. I said yes, it was me. Then he asked if I was sitting down. I remember thinking what an odd question that was, and I told him yes. He said, "One of your best friends was killed in a car accident. She wanted you to know. I apologize for the news." And just like that, the line disconnected. My heart dropped. My husband saw my face and moved from his chair to ask if I was okay. I told him exactly what the man said. He hugged me. We finished wrapping gifts. Eventually, we tried to sleep. The next morning, my phone rang again. It was my best friend's mother calling to tell me the news. When I said I already knew, she asked me how, and I explained the phone call. She was silent for a moment, and then she told me that was impossible. My friend had moved from the East Coast to Alaska months earlier, and that's where she died. She was killed instantly. The time of her accident was 3:36 p.m. Alaska time, the exact moment my phone rang on the East Coast at 7:36 p.m. I wondered if maybe it was the EMS or first responder calling, but they aren't allowed to notify anyone until after the body is identified, and that didn't happen until the next morning. Her mother was the first person that they contacted. A glitch? A ghost? An angel? I don't know, but I'll never forget that moment. One commenter highlights that the caller said that she had wanted you to know. I wonder if somebody got to her before she passed and she told them to call you, and then she passed. OP responded to that saying, I thought that too, but from what was reported, she died before anyone could reach her. A bystander stopped and tried to resuscitate her, but she was gone on impact. I guess I'll never know. In a follow-up question, someone asks, how did you hear about the bystander? Maybe it was them? OP responded to that question saying, it was in the newspaper. It said she was killed on impact, but somebody saw the crash and tried CPR before the paramedics arrived. In another comment thread, somebody writes, I believe you. When I was 16, I dreamt of an old schoolmate I hadn't seen since elementary school. In the dream, we were in his old house playing Blades of Steel on Sega. He never spoke, just smiled, and then he walked me to the door. That was Friday night. Sunday, his family showed up at church for the first time in years. They were there to tell everyone that he had passed on Friday, run off the road by a drunk driver. I still think about that dream 20 years later. Our next commenter writes, I don't know how any of this works, but I believe you. A young man I knew died instantly in a crash years ago. He still lived with his parents and always called if he'd be late. That night, their phone rang. No one spoke, but his mother heard something on the line, just a sound she could never describe and never forget. Moments later, the authorities came to the door. This was long before cell phones, and there were no payphones anywhere near the crash site. And now, the final story in this episode. From 5 years ago, the story is titled, Weird Things Are Happening. I don't really know how to start this, and sorry if my grammar isn't perfect, but it begins at Christmas. My mom specifically said she wanted Vanilla Bean Noel body wash and perfume from Bath & Body Works. She was adamant about it. So on November 30th, I went with my friends and bought it. I distinctly remember buying it because I knew the cashier and we asked each other how we were doing and everything. I bought the set. They gave me a bag, 4 items totaling $38.99. On Christmas, I gave it to my mom. She was happy. Everything was normal. Fast forward to yesterday, I came across a TikTok where a guy thinks he's somehow in another dimension because a few things in his life are suddenly off. Famous people he's never heard of, stuff like that. I didn't think much of it. That night, I was driving and my windshield wiper broke. It was raining pretty badly, so I pulled over on the highway, planning to tape it back together. I opened the trunk and started digging around. I opened a plastic bag and there it was, my mom's present. The exact one I had already given her. Same Bath & Body Works bag, same for lotions and perfumes. I literally froze. How were there two? I didn't really think too deeply until the next morning. But once it hit me, it hit me. There was no logical explanation. My friends and I talked about it, but none of them said it was theirs. I checked my bank statement. Only one charge in the last 3 months for that set, not 2. And the one in my car had the receipt in it. So somehow I gave my mom a set I don't remember buying, but it was hers, wrapped, gifted, and opened. And then I pulled the same set out of my trunk weeks later, untouched with the receipt. It's really hard to put into words because it just makes no sense to me. A commenter responded to this story saying, years later, the exact same thing happened to me with the Dark Knight DVD. I bought a copy for my apartment when I lived with my brother in college. Got it at Blockbuster when they were closing, only a couple of dollars. It even had the Blockbuster sticker on the disc. Years passed, we move out, we split everything like a married couple, dividing assets. He took most of the DVDs and I took the binder of movies. The Dark Knight stayed with him in the living room set with the other two films. We watched them all the time. Then one day, going through my binder, I suddenly had The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, but no Batman Begins. I never owned any of those outside of the shared set. Next time I was at his place, I checked. He had Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, but no The Dark Knight Rises. And his Dark Knight disc had the exact same Blockbuster sticker as mine did. We've never been able to figure it out, but somehow we both ended up with the same DVD. So that is all we have for today. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and comment, share. Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you have ever had a glitch happen over Christmas, please share them in the comments, or any other glitch for that matter. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.